Hello, everyone, and welcome to Wellness with Deepal. I am your host, Deepal Shah. And it is so wonderful to have you here on this beautiful morning or afternoon, wherever you are, wherever you're tuning in from. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Falling in love with the human experience. Have you really thought about your human experience? What is this human experience? What is it all about? And how do we use this human experience to help the people around us? We're going to dive in with Erica VanEaton today, who is an intuitive life coach, spiritual advisor, and multidimensional healer working with the quantum field of potentials of which we all reside. She has been facilitating many group healings, individual mentoring of clients, and children, especially when she had this experience with her own son, this human experience. Her eldest son had Down syndrome and autism. And understanding what the human body needs, what is it looking for on a different dimension, rather than just conventional medicine. We're going to dive into how Erica helped her own son, because she understands how one can actually embody their own internal messages of the body and leave them limitless, because a lot of times we limit ourselves. Why do we limit ourselves when we are this beautiful multidimensional being? And Erica is going to help us all reawaken to this human divine experience and how we can get through life in this beautiful body with ease and grace and love and light, and accept our human experiences. So I do want to welcome Erica at this time. Hello, Erica. Welcome.
Hi, I'm so excited to talk about this topic with you today. It's something that I think is grossly overlooked and undervalued. So thank you for
Wow.
having me.
Well, I agree, because you know what? I want to dive into the entire human experience. However, before we do that, I want to know about your journey. Like, what did you do before and how did you get here? Because did you do this work all along? Or, everybody has this beautiful story. So I want to hear yours.
All right, awesome. So my journey into the world of healing really began with the birth of my oldest son. Up to that point, I'd been a cardiac sonographer and working in a hospital. And what that is you're looking internally at the heart function and seeing how well it operates, taking different quantitative measurements and things. So when my oldest son was born, we had a very clear connection. I just knew this child, but I wasn't awakened yet. So I didn't really understand things on a soul level, but I knew this child. And when I said his name for the first time, he turned his head and he looked me directly in the eyes. And we had this very deep connection. I knew that he knew me too. And because we had such a clear connection, I didn't see him as a diagnosis, and I saw past that. And so for the first 3 years of his life, he was primarily just with me and my husband. And I was able to teach and accelerate his learning so that by the time he was 3 years old, he could sight read close to 100 words. He knew colors, he knew shapes, talking, walking, all these different things. But I didn't understand energy yet. So I didn't understand that me internalizing this deep feeling of fear that when he started school, that his teacher wouldn't know and see his brilliance in the way that I knew and saw it, that vibration that I was emitting out would cause that experience to come into our lives. So when he did start school, that's exactly the kind of teacher that he received. And he became the vision that she saw of him, and we lost everything. And that's
Mm.
when autism became really prevalent. And it
Wow.
was the biggest learning gift of my life. But I still didn't realize it at the time. So behavior started to escalate, and I had to decrease my hours at the hospital because I was having to go to the school and get him because his behaviors would be so erratic at school that they couldn't calm him down. As soon as I was getting him home, completely different story. He would relax. I had had another son at this time that would often have anger outbursts, and I would have no idea why. I had a miscarriage, and then I had another son. But it was through these different things that I started feeling a lot of shame and a lot of failure because of this lost connection with my oldest son, and I didn't know how to help him.
Yeah.
So I started meditating. And when I started meditating, sorry, I need some water.
Yeah. I mean, this is hard. This is difficult to talk about because, I don't have a child with autism, and I wish I could say that, oh, I understand. And a lot of people who don't and haven't been in your shoes don't understand. But there are so many parents that are going through this right now with a child who is autistic. And it's so beautiful how you're bringing all this together and bringing it to life for us, because we want to know what did you feel throughout this? What did your son feel? What did you experience? And how did you help not only your family manage this, because sometimes you know diseases, illnesses that are chronic could manifest with and affect an entire family as we all come to this planet together to have this divine experience. And so please continue.
Thank you. So I started meditating, and I started just to quiet and to find some semblance of peace from that negative mind chatter. But what I noticed was the more I meditated and I came into the observer standpoint, that everything in the house began to calm back down. My
Mm.
children started responding to me differently. My children started responding to each other differently. And so then I was looking at, I could see this external shift change when I changed my internal emotional state, but I could also see it at the hospital because when
Yeah.
I was scanning a patient, I could, I've been intuitive my whole life. I've always just known things and knew how to, but I didn't understand the gift. I didn't know how to work with it. But as I began to open up, I could see like intuitively, I would tap into a patient that was really upset. If I just started talking to them about something that would calm them down, their heart function would become more coherent. I would get better images. And
Wow.
their heart rate would come down, their blood pressure would come down. It was just so I was seeing it internally and I was seeing it externally. So that's what started my journey down this. And then things began to shift and change from there. And what I really realized is that these beings that we call autistic or Down syndrome, cerebral palsy, what this really allows for them to do is to carry an entire spectrum of light because they're not filtering things through the ego in the way that it has been before.
Yeah.
But what I realized and I started working with the archangels and Mother Mary on this, is that we actually do need an ego here because we need this filter. We just haven't known how to work with it. And it's just been in this reaction motion of, okay, these are emotions are, we're going to feed off of this to keep this human container safe. And so it's time to rewrite the rules with which our egos and our minds and our body consciousness have been living by. And that's
Yeah.
what he came here to show me. And so as I began to work with my ego differently, then his began to shift and become a filter for him. So instead of my ego getting triggered by different frequencies coming into the field and being reactive to it, it now sees that it's just not meant for me. If it's whatever frequencies are coming into my field, if they're not bringing my internal codes harmony, if they're not bringing expansion to my internal codes, if they're causing incoherence in any way, it doesn't judge those frequencies coming in. it just redirects them back out of the field because it knows that it's not a vibrational match for me. So
Yeah.
we're beginning to work with this human container differently. And when I did that with my son, I could take him anywhere. He could go into any school with any kind of teacher, and he wasn't going to be affected by them because I knew from the get-go, even before I was awake, I heard very clearly that he wasn't filtering things through his ego, but I
Hmm.
didn't understand what it meant. He didn't have a filter around him. So if he was with me, he was one person, but when he went to school and someone saw him as something different, he was something very different,
Yeah.
right? And that's how he was so affected. So he needed the ego to work around him in his energy matrix to become a filter to let him know who he was and who he wasn't.
Yeah.
They're very much in unity consciousness, and it's showing us how to work in unity consciousness, but still have a sovereign experience here.
I agree.
Yeah, we need these different things. So the archangels came in, and my question was, so I ask a lot of questions. It's how I see portals of energy open to allow different levels of consciousness to come in. And so my question was, you can come to me as an individual archangel and you feel one way, and I can experience you one way, but you can come in as a collective and I can feel you and hear you as a collective too. I was like, what is the difference? Like what is your boundary? How do you have that? And so my question was, do you have an ego?
Mm.
And the answer was very much yes. They don't call it an ego. It's never been programmed by emotions like ours. It's more just like a shield in their matrix that helps give them some identity, a boundary of something different.
Mm.
So we are beginning to, and what you do, like when we work in this quantum field that we'll get into in a little bit,
Yeah.
we're beginning to unprogram. And so what happens when we're a fetus in the belly of the mother is that there are continual vibrations coming into our field of emotions, of inherited belief programming, subconscious beliefs coming,
Oh,
yeah, always coming
yeah.
into the little baby body. Well,
Yep.
our body doesn't know how to process it. So it comes in and then the heart is the first thing to develop on the human. So it sends a signal to the heart. The heart doesn't know what to do with it. It sends it directly to the brain. And when the brain feels that, gets that vibration, it starts forming neural pathways. These neural pathways form. And when a neural pathway is formed, it becomes a subconscious belief that our ego, that's this baby ego learning how to develop, is looking at these subconscious belief systems, taking them on to be true for this whole human container.
Yeah.
The body consciousness is developing at this time. And we've never really talked about the body as being its own human, but
Right.
it very much is. So your body consciousness is developing at this time. It's feeling these frequencies come in. It's feeling all these things and it doesn't know how to process it. So they're immediately getting stuck in our tissues and cellular memory. And then the other part of that is our body, when we are developing as a fetus, we're pulling all those photons of light, all those microbiome from the earth itself. Well,
Yeah.
all the programs that are in this earth plane from all the emotional warfare that we've had, we're pulling that back into our body. And so we have a lot of healing work to do. And I think that's what you understand too.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's so much that you just said here that I'm just
Yeah.
kind of like taking it all in.
I know. I'm like,
I'm taking it all in because there's a lot of questions. When we talk about ego, a lot of
mhm,
times people see it as a negative thing, right? So we're always trying to quiet that ego, but you're bringing the importance of the ego to the forefront of our divine and human experience to help us experience, but how to manage that ego, right? It's all about managing it, not letting it take over,
mhm.
right?
Well, and even it becomes like my ego is a beautiful friend. So if I talk to my ego like it's a person, and I'm like, okay, show me. Sometimes it will trigger me at times, but it's just showing me where I still have a subconscious belief that I need to let go of.
That's true. I
So
love it.
yeah, and so my ego is now when I do healing work with people and we bring their egos back into alignment with the spirit. What we're doing with the ego and the mind, because the mind has its own consciousness, your body has its own consciousness. When we talk to them and when we listen to them and when we introduce them to the heart space, to the spirit, the truth of who we are, sometimes they don't even know that each other exists. So they're not in communication. But when they begin to understand, okay, it is my job to help the self-expression of this human expand to its fullest potential, which is limitless here, then they begin to work in a different way, because then they realize they're limitless too.
Yeah.
We've been thinking that the ego is restrictive and not malleable and hard. And that's absolutely not true. It's been true up to this point because that's the paradigm, that's the level of consciousness that it's been in.
Right.
But it's not that at all. The angelic showed me something completely different. My son showed me completely different. And when we allow that to shift and change, when we are wanting to bring more of our soul into our body and expand that out, there's no fear there. The restriction is gone because the ego and the mind and the body consciousness have a trusting relationship with the spirit. And if that is a desire of the spirit, then it's going to allow for more of the truth of who you are to come down into you and expand out.
And that's what we want. We want ourselves to expand. But when we say expand, what are we expanding to? Can you explain a little bit about that?
Mm-hmm. So I think about we are all connected by this quantum field of energy, this massive, never-ending field of energy, right? And if the simplest way to think about it is there's different dimensional fields in that quantum field. So it's like a sphere inside of another sphere, inside of another sphere, and it's infinite. So when we think about the third dimension, all the different programs that we as a society have believed in, it's the word I'm forgetting, but when enough, okay, let's say a thought form comes forward. When enough people believe in that thought form, it becomes like an app. It becomes a computer program that lives in that third dimension. So we're wanting to expand past that third dimension so we can feel and know limitless potential. Because how we create our reality is that we're sending vibrations out, and there's a term in physics called harmonic resonance, which means like attracts like, basically. So we're wanting to expand our spirit out past all these programs that are in the third dimension so we can feel and manifest an archetype of life that is beyond what we've been programmed to believe is possible for us. And that's where healing comes into place. And that's where manifestation comes into place. The problem has been when we attempt to manifest, when we're wanting to heal, we're playing out here in this field of where there's no programs, in this field of limitless potentials. And we're out there for a little bit, but then we bring it back and we bring it back to us where we are now. And it gets muddied up when it hits all these programs. So there's ways to get through that. And that's a whole nother class and a whole nother
Yeah. It almost feels like we self-sabotage our own growth. And that's where we become limited because we are in this 3D, and it's hard for people to see past that. I'll do classes, right? And within these classes that I do, it's to help me become more aware, more conscious, keep my studies going, because that's what helps me keep my energy going and alive. And because we do this work and it's easy to be pulled down into the 3D. And so when I do the work, a lot of the times I will hear my guru say, okay, so you do this for 5 days and then what? Do you just tell yourself, and many people do, oh, I got to get back to reality or the norm.
I love this point. I love this point so much. It's understanding that there is nothing wrong with the third dimension. It's just the apps that are running in it. So we're always going to be in the third or fifth dimension because we're physical. And that's okay. And it's beautiful. In order for a particle to slow down enough to become physical matter, like the crystals I like to hold in my hands, or, the shirt, the beautiful polka dot shirt you're wearing. So in order for that to become physical, they can't reside out in these these highly unprogrammed dimensional realms, it has to come back through and slow it down enough to be this. And we came here to experience this. We came here to experience what it feels like. One of the most beautiful experiences I had recently was I was working with a client, and we had worked through some really heavy past life, ancestral trauma kind of stuff. And at the end, the guides were like, okay, now you need to play. We need to go back into play. So I was like, okay. I was like, hey, do you want to play? And she's like, yes. And I was like, okay, let's go. So we shot up to the cosmos, and we're out there, we're floating, we're just feeling our energy matrix like stretch and flow and things. And then we saw these beautiful rainbow portals almost. And I was like, whoa, okay, what are those? So we were just floating out there, and these beings came through. And they looked very translucent. It's almost like if you could see them, you could see a whole nother universe in them. And so I just looked at them for a little bit, and then I started asking questions because that's what I do. So I was like, okay, do you guys have a sovereign experience where you're from? Meaning, do you know your life's mission from the get-go? Because one thing that we always complain about, or one thing that we always, what's my next step? Like, what's my soul path? You know, all this stuff. And they said that they very much know their mission, the expanse of their lifetime. And so then my question was, and this surprised me, I asked, do you get bored? Because if you think about knowing what you're supposed to do your whole lifetime doing it, would that be boring? I mean, we want to know. But yet if we knew, would that be boring? So I asked them, and what they showed me, well, after they got done laughing at me, what they showed me was that they're tapped into the universal stream of wisdom at all time. And they showed me what they felt, because that was my question. It's like, what does it feel like where you're from? What does it feel like to know? And so, and I know this can get very woo-woo, but I felt that they shared energy with me. So they shared this energy with me and my client at the same time. And at first we felt nothing, but then we felt this complete expansion of our heart space. And it was, what they were showing us was complete detachment and neutrality. And when I was in that space, when we were in that space, I was like, there's no desire here. There's no desire for anything here, which was beautiful, but it was different than bliss. It was different than excitement that we feel here. It was just complete neutrality and detachment. And then I understood how they could do that expanse of the whole life, because they were completely detached. Mm-hmm. But it truly showed me in that moment, and this is the gift that they were giving me, the gift that Earth is for the not knowing. The gift that Earth is to have desires. The gift that Earth is to even feel pain and anger at times. It's such a gift to be here and experience this when there's nowhere else that we get to experience that. And that's why so many souls want to come here, is to experience all of this. And it just reinforced how lucky we are to be here. And even though times it can be so freaking hard and it can be painful and we can go through illnesses, it is a gift of wisdom that we receive, of expansion when we're here. So we're talking about the human experience, but having experiences like that, like, just helps me fully embody how much gratitude I have for everything I've ever been through here and I'm going to go through here.
I know. It's so difficult sometimes for a lot of people. Oops, it's echoing on my end. Okay, there we go. It's very difficult for a lot of people when they are going through one thing after another, you know, and it feels like when you get drawn down into that darkness and hopelessness, and it's like, how do you just keep going? Right? How do you keep going with the human experience? What's your thought process around that?
I love it because I've been there. So when my son and I lost our connection, I was down that deep hole because I felt like a complete failure. And I was like, maybe he would be better off with a different parent, you know? So I've been there and I felt that. And What I can say is that when we're having that experience and having those emotions, we are very much constricted in that third dimension, all those programs. And our body almost becomes addicted to that feeling. So we keep pulling from the quantum field those same experiences. So the question is, how do I keep going? How do I shift out of it? And it's honestly like a very human basic level. We have to stop the chemical addiction in your body to get you past that to play out in a different quantum field. And that's mind over matter. Like we have to stop it. So that's why I turned to meditation. And if you place like the tongue on the roof of your mouth, it links up your hypothalamus and you breathe deep and then you start releasing different hormones. It's very basic human things that we can do to begin to shift everything in the body so that you can begin to daydream about something. Daydreaming is beautiful. Like if you can just daydream for a little bit, because what does that do? That puts you out in the quantum field that's not programmed,
I used to
right?
get in trouble for daydreaming, so my teachers would send notes home saying, "Oh, all she does is daydream." I'm like, "Oh, wow." So I guess in fifth grade, even
Mhm.
before that, I was just a daydreamer, and I'm okay with that.
Absolutely. We take these techniques that we naturally have as kids to move through energy and we're programmed out of them because it's not the norm. Like a natural way for kids to release energy is to run around and yell and scream a little bit.
Yeah.
But those behaviors begin to be seen as socially unacceptable, and we don't give them the keys through learning how to move energy through them to replace that behavior. So they begin to trap and internalize all these different kinds of emotions in their tissues. And then we wonder why people explode. So
Yeah.
it's going back to play. Like all this needs to go back to play. And that's what the angels are so good at continually. That's why they had me go back to play with that client. We did this deep, heavy, heavy work. And then they're like, okay, it's time to play. So we go play and we're like flipping around the universe, doing whatever, and you can just imagine it in your mind if you can't see or you really can't feel and you don't know if it's true. What if it was true? Just play pretend. So it's going back to your imagination and letting your mind, because your mind is a beautiful container, your mind loves to imagine. Give it the freedom and the authority to move energy on your behalf. Give your mind the freedom. You talk to it like it's a person. Be like, okay, mind, let's just daydream. Let's just play. Let's forget all these other programs that are happening and let's just play.
I agree. I love playing, and I think that's a great message for today. Play, daydream, do whatever you want to do, but play. And whether it's actually, with action or just in your mind through meditation or just sitting there and wandering out into space, you can still play. And I think that's beautiful. Is there anything you want to add today, Erica? Because I do want to share with people how they could get in touch with you. But before we do that, is there anything that you want to add?
What I want to add, and when you see someone with differences, is understand that they're holding frequencies for the rest of humanity that we haven't been able to hold. So have some honor and respect for them. They've chosen a life that's not easy, but they did that for humanity. They did that knowing it was going to be hard, but it allowed them to carry all these frequencies for us to step up into that we haven't been able to carry. So just send them some love and remember to play and have fun and dream.
I love it. I love it. Thank you. Now, if people want to get in touch with you, how can they do that? What's the best way?
You can go to my website or you can email me, Erica at ericavaneaton.com. And
Okay.
my website is ericavaneaton.com. And I have a coupon code. If you use Ananda for Life, you can get a discount off of a course, a 4-part course that I have on there, which is all about unifying the ego, mind, and body consciousness with the soul. And there's a lot of deep healing work and channeling that is on all those videos and MP3s and stuff. So yeah.
Awesome. I've got your facebook.com/Erica.VanEaton. You can follow her there, and we will have below, if you'll look below in the comments, you will also see all the information that she has just given about her course and the discount code, as well as her website. So I want to thank you, Erica, and thank you for being here. Thank you for being the light that you are, and of course, your son for being the amazing light that he is for us. I do want to remind everyone that the global gathering is coming up, and I'm going to put the link to the global gathering. If you have not already signed up for the global gathering, please do so. If you want to join 5, 6, 7 of the most amazing healers, spiritual activists, thought leaders for the November 17th global gathering, which is at 6:30 p.m. Eastern. We look forward to having all of you there. It's a free event. Come join us. There will be music and lots of healings and activations, and I want you to be there. If you're already receiving the reminders and newsletters for the global gathering, you don't need to do anything. And thank you again. Namaste, everybody.